Alright, this video is going to be um, how to set up kind of wires going from a character's head to their body, or perhaps their body to their arm, or something like that. Kind of like a Mewtwo type thing, where you've got a little thing going from here to here that just stays attached. I'm not going to actually make wires, because I don't feel like going into that much detail, but I'm just going to have one single tube going from part of my model to another. And before we begin, I should probably point out that obviously I did not design this character to have a tube connecting from his head to his chest or anything, so there's not going to be like a model, part of the model that's like a base for the tube to go into or anything like you would want to have. But this is just purely a rigging thing. So, first of all, let's do some clever trickery to make our tube. This is not necessarily related to the rig, but I feel like doing it anyway. I'm going to make myself a cylinder. That really only needs to be 8 sides for now. Caps, we can get rid of the caps on our thing. And I might make this taller and give it a ton more subdivisions on height. And what I'm going to do, I'm also going to delete those caps, that's why I made them have no subdivisions. I'm going to take this and I'm going to put a bend deformer on it. This is just one option. Obviously, this is not the only way to do any of this, but I just kind of thought it might be fun to take this bend deformer, I'll parent it to the cylinder, or maybe I should do it the other way around, actually, if that's possible. And I'm going to use this to line up how my tube can be actually attached onto the body. And part of this will be changing the curvature. Part of it may also involve reducing the height of my cylinder, which I can still do if I have my inputs available. And I'm going to kind of use this to get a rough idea of where I can place my tube on my character. So I'm going to keep playing around with this. Of course, now that I'm doing this, it seems kind of inefficient, but I would like things to be uniform, including, you know, the mesh on my cylinder. So rather than extrude out a tube the long way, I'm doing it like this to get started. Oh dear, this is taking longer than I wanted it to. I think I'll kind of just do something like this for now, and I'm just going to have these clip through because, like I said, I don't actually have models for these to be plugged in. So I'm going to duplicate my cylinder so that it doesn't have the deformer on it. I can delete those for now. And now I'm ready to start messing around with this. And I'm going to go into my orthographic view. I'm just going to use joints for this because what I'm going to end up using is an IK handle. And I might also isolate this. Go to my joint tool, probably turn on snap to projected center would be useful. But I'm not actually going to turn on point snapping or snap to vertices because that will kind of, oh, you know what? This is off to a great start, isn't it? But what I am going to do that, and the reason is that then I can just move the entire joint chain into the center of the geometry after the fact. These are a little inconsistent, I've noticed, but we'll live. And there is my joint chain. Like I was saying, if we look from, if we look from any angle, this one somehow got a little out of whack. Oh, hello. That's easy enough to fix. Just going to unparent that. And then I can snap move this back into the center. So, I'm going to run a real quick orient on this to make sure that everything is going the right direction. And now we're ready to start with the IK handle. The reason I'm using an IK handle is because that's going to be the easiest thing to kind of have control over. I might go only to the second to last one here. And now we can see how this is going to look. It'll be able to stretch out, it'll be able to move forward, it'll be able to go backwards. So that's why I'm using this. There may be other ways of doing this, but this is just my solution for the time being. And luckily, since my tube is pointing out in -z, my pole vector is already going in -z as well. Now I can grab the joint, chain, grab the cylinder. Obviously, you want to name all this stuff and whatnot first. I'm just doing this as a quick thing. We can skin that, and now we have a fairly decent looking weight painting on there already, which tends to happen when you have uniformly spaced out joints like this. And now we have the troublesome challenge of how do we attach this onto the rest of the rig so that it'll follow the head and also follow the torso. So one thing that we can do is I might just grab this chest joint and then grab the base joint of my tube and just do a regular old parent constraint on there. And now I'll already have this going on, which is perfectly fine. If you have another way of attaching this, that's okay. You could maybe just add it into the actual hierarchy of the skeleton yourself. Instead of parent constraining it, there's numerous things you could do. And then for the head, we need the actual IK handle to be kind of stuck into the head. So we're going to do a pretty similar thing. I might just grab the head joint and then grab the IK handle and do the exact same thing. And now, technically the tube is working. Really, the only problem is that we're getting this type of thing going on here, where it's kind of going in at an angle, it's clipping. And so this is going to be the tricky part about this whole setup. So this part might be a little bit more experimental. Technically, if that was fine, you know, if you're not really going to see the back of the head too much, then that might be okay, but let's try a few things. So I might try one experiment, which is that I'm going to try an aim constraint. Oh, I selected this in the wrong order. I might try an aim constraint from here to here. No, not the IK handle. Stop selecting that. And also, why can't I undo? Computer, don't be like this. All right. I'm going to apply that on there. Actually, I might see what happens if I turn off maintain offset. Interesting. So, we can see what happens with that. Alright. So we're getting some information here. It didn't necessarily work, but we're still getting more data. So it looks like we can keep the joints pointing towards the head, but we might want to actually have the IK handle go to a different point. So we're going to do a little destruction of our setup here. And I'm going to make the IK handle over again, except I might start with this joint and only go up to, let's say, this joint. And I will once again do what I did before and put a parent constraint on those two things. Now we're getting somewhere. As we can see down at the bottom, it's also kind of doing the same thing. Really, the only problem is that this is very awkwardly placed. And I think that would be something more along the lines of at the beginning when you're making your joint chain, I would have wanted to kind of, have a joint here and then go directly out and then have that start to go up, rather than all being one long chain. But yeah, so just by placing my IK handle on a different joint than the one that we started with, then we can kind of affect how that looks there. And some of this will come down to weight painting, because this is looking pretty ugly right now. It would be okay perhaps with some tweaking. And this still has the aim constraint on it. I forgot about that. So perhaps if I were to delete the aim constraint from this and then do the same thing over again, but to the current joint. Now we're talking. Cool. Alright. I'm glad this worked, because otherwise I would look like an idiot. Now this isn't really going to stretch out too much, because just there's limitations on the IK and on the geometry. So you may want to take that into consideration when you're making not only your wires or your tube, but also when you're making your joint chain. As far as I know, I mean, there's no easy way to kind of make stretching for an IK handle like this without doing a lot more work. But yeah, this should be a good enough setup to get yourself started. And if you take this same principle, and you could probably apply the same thing, like if I wanted a tube going from the bicep to the tricep, wrist, whatever, or from the back into the bicep, all sorts of different things. But just using a good old-fashioned IK handle for this without doing anything beyond the basics. So, I hope that's helpful, and I'm going to end this video now. Bye!